Now, I done a review of this dinghy a few weeks ago. It was, as I said at the time, it was quite inexpensive, but there were a few shortcuts that had been taken in its production, and this here is one of them. On the end of this used to live a rubber bung that went in here, and this goes into the transom and it stops water getting in and out the boat. And at the back here you'll see this wee non-return valve for the water, and this, it allows the water to come out of the boat but not to go back in. And somewhere along the line the rubber bung has untied itself, and then I imagine somewhere in the sea as I was coming across it's popped out. So I'm going to have to make another one and make sure that it's not going to pop out of here again. And the reason I'm going to have to make another one is this is one of the cheap dinghies from Amazon, and the company doesn't make spares, so I'm sure I could buy one from somewhere, but they're easy enough to make. You can make them out of hot glue, and that's what I'm going to make just now. And it's literally just to go in here, just to fill this and to stop that from opening up and letting water in. And it's easy enough to do. I've already got this unscrewed. You can just take this out here, and it's just like a skin fitting for a boat. Well, I suppose it is in a way, but it's just like one of the skin fittings for the bigger boats. So, as I said, I'm going to fill this with hot glue in here, and I've not decided whether I'm going to put a handle on it or not that I can pull in and out, because the boat's really light. It's only about 40 kilos, so we tend just to tip it upside down anyway, so we don't need it to self-empty as it's going along. That's all that this wee membrane in here's for. It lets the water through there, but it doesn't let the water from the sea back in. And it just, as you scoot along the water, the gravity brings all the water that's in the boat back to here, and it allows it through. But as I said, it doesn't allow the sea back in this way. So I'm just going to take this through, and I'm going to get it filled up with hot glue. Obviously I'm going to have to put something in the front here just to stop it melting this wee valve, because the valve is only paper thin and it looks to be made out of some sort of latex. So I'll get a barrier put in front of that. Although the hot glue's no hugely hot, it's hot enough for it to melt this wee thing. So we'll get that set up and I'll come back in. Now, this is not a how-to video, just so we're clear. This is how I do it. And as I've said in previous videos, I'm surprised I've survived this long. Having said that, this is how I do it, and it works quite well for me. So what I've done here is, this is some of the heat-proof latex stuff from one of those kind of oven mitts you get free in a lot of things, like barbecue things. And I've just cut it to the right size. And then what we'll do is we'll put it in there. As you can see, that's made a nice tight barrier so that this doesn't overheat. And then this is just a random tin. I think this one was out of one of the ethanol heaters. And these are just bits of chopped up glue stick. I use secateurs because they can be quite sticky to cut with a knife and things, and you don't want to be messing about with knives, jamming and things round about your fingers, so secateurs cut them up quite easy. And I'll just fill them in here. Now, I usually keep one of these tins handy for things like this, so I put too much in rather than making it and then not having enough. But I'll just make sure everything's out the way, and then I'll get the heat gun on it. Now this can take a wee while for it to get hot enough, so I'll get it once it's runny and then I'll come back in. You can see here where it started to melt down. You don't want to get too hot. If it starts smoking, then you're too hot and you need to get a wee second. There's usually a few settings on the heat gun, so if it's starting to smoke, I usually just bring it down to the cooler setting. And also, as I said, I'm not saying do this, but if you find yourself doing this, be aware that it is hot glue. It gets nuclear hot and it sticks to you, so if you get that on your fingers, it's not a good day. So as I said, I'm not telling anybody to do this. This is just how I do it, and I make doubly sure that it doesn't make contact with my skin, because if it did, it would stick on and it would be a very bad day, as I said. Anyway, I'm going to continue heating this and we'll come back in once it's melted. Now, I've actually got some water here for it to put that into after I've poured this, just so that it doesn't get too hot. Now, as you can see, I've got that just proud of it, and then I'm going to stick it in here just to let it cool down a bit faster. And then with the rest of that, we'll just let it cool down, and then the next time we need it, it'll be there again. But as you can see, that's filling that nicely. I've decided not to put a handle in it. I'm just going to keep that as a permanent bung. As I said, you know, the boat's no heavy, so it's easy enough just to flip over, get any water out of it, and then pack it away. But we'll leave that in the cold water there for a while just to cool right down, and we'll come back in a bit. Well, it's been around 30 minutes now, and as you can see, this is hardened up quite nice. It's nice and cool to the touch. And you can see that the valve on the other side is still in good working order, although we don't need that now because this is permanent in here. If I had wanted to make one that would come in and out, I would have put a handle in the centre there, something with a loophole that I could tie the string round, and before I poured it in, I would have put something like oil in it, maybe 3-in-1 oil or something, just smeared it round the inside, just so that it didn't stick. But I'm happy the way it is. As I said, the dinghy's it's no heavy, so I can pick it up and just flip it over, and any water that's in it will drain out. So I'll go back through and I'll put this in and I'll let you see the end result. Now there's an insert here in the inside that goes right through that you screw into, and I've got this gasket washer on here on this side to make sure it's watertight, and it should be as simple as screwing this in. As you can hear, that's it starting to catch and tighten right up. There we go. That's good and tight. As I said, if I wanted that to come back out, I would have had to put a releasing agent on the inside before I poured this. And the only thing left to do now is to remove this so that it doesn't get caught in the prop on my outboard. as I said, this wasn't a how-to video. This is how I do it. And this, when it's in its molten form like it was when it was clear, it's like napalm. It literally sticks and burns forever. So if you do find yourself in this situation, then be very, very careful of getting that on your skin. But as I said, you know, this is just a quick fix. It's just a way that keeps me on the water in a pinch. And I thought while I was doing it, I would just make this video. Just as an alternative idea, if you ever find yourself in this situation. Anyway, if you liked this video, if you found it useful, if you could please like, share and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out. And thank you very much for watching.